Just a few words before we get into the actual video. This video was intended to be a let's compare C64 versus Amiga, but in truth, the Amiga version is so stupidly hard that without spending an awful lot of time practicing, you probably find it very, very hard to beat without using cheats to get infinite lives. For the purpose of the videos I post, I have the firm belief that if you have to cheat to win, you've already lost. So I'm not using any cheat modes, cheat codes, whatever, on the games that I cover, unless I do it for the fun of it. But then I will make a clear notification of that. The Amiga version might be covered some other time, but don't count on it. Hello and welcome to Last Ninja 3 for the Commodore 64. A game I have been very well aware of for quite a while, but even though I played it 30 years ago, I never actually got around to completing it. I just did not have the interest. The story is that the main character, Amakuni, has had a few disputes with the evil Shogun Kunitoki, Their first encounter was, of course, in Last Ninja 1, but then Kunitoki managed to get his spirit shifted away to modern day New York, modern day 1988, that was. And the Council of Ninja Spiritualism thing, whatever, teleported Hamakuni forwards in time so he could deal with Kunitoki once and for all. But of course, game sequels requiring, Kunitoki wasn't quite done yet. Hamakuni was long awaiting the time where he would be called for again, and of course it eventually happened. Kunitoki, bent on destroying anything ninja related, has set up in a temple in Tibet where he wants to basically corrupt the spiritualism even, words, of ninjutsu in order to basically make all potential ninjas lose hope. Hamakuni is made aware of that, basically by the fact that the ninja spirits are once again whisking him away, and he intends to go and stop Kunitoki once and for all. That was a very rough cut version of the plot, but that is basically the premise. In order to face off against Kunitoki for the third time, Hamakuni will have to go through the different temple wings, each representing one element: earth, water, air, fire. And then the fifth one, which no student apparently has ever entered, which is void, which of course is where we will find the big baddie at the end. Each level is somewhat themed around the element they are reflecting. Obviously, some are more than others, and I don't know what to say. This game, for me personally, I remember reading an awful lot of behind the scenes preview stuff back in the day. Mainly, of course, from English magazines, which wasn't necessarily super easy to get hold of in Denmark, but I followed the development of Last Ninja 3 as much as I could. After The Last Ninja and Last Ninja 2, there was a huge desire from the fanbase to get yet another game in the series, and I can't help but feel, I could easily be wrong, but I can't help but feel that System 3 wasn't really ready for another Last Ninja game, and I'm not even sure they as such intended to make another Last Ninja game. Again, it could just be me, but reading previews and all that stuff during development, I kind of felt that Mark Cale, the producer of the game, never showed any heartfelt enthusiasm for the project. Maybe it's just a misinterpretation for me, but to me it sounded a lot like there was not an awful lot of heart gone into making this game. He later said that Last Ninja 3 wasn't exactly the best of the three, and was explaining part of the reason possibly being that half of the original team was not involved in developing Last Ninja 3. On a strictly personal note, I am not a big fan of this game at all. There was an awful lot of talks about whistles and bells and sharper looking graphics and hero sprites and all sorts of good things, but it may have the graphics to a point. I will get into that later. It may have the music, but so did the other games. But for me personally, it just feels like this game has no soul. The original Last Ninja, it was a revolution as a game when it came out, especially on the Commodore 64. For me, it made me feel like I was transported back to pre-feudal Japan, whatever. And the setting and atmosphere was very, very thick. I fully enjoyed it, and I was totally immersed in it. I was quite a bit younger, I suppose, but just beating the Guardian of level 1. Expect the Guardian to be a bit tougher than they are. On to next stage. But going back to what I was saying before, Last Ninja 2, some people didn't necessarily like the 1988 modern New York setting. I had no issues with it at all. And of course, Matthew Gray's music was extremely epic. So epic that I never understood why System 3 felt a need to release a Ninja remix, which of course was the Commodore 64, was a remix of the second game with a new soundtrack by Rein Ubehand, the person responsible for the music in this game as well. Last Ninja 3 for me is, I don't know, it just feels flat. I mean, I can appreciate the graphics, I can appreciate the music, actually more so than I expected to. Personal preference and all that, but I've never been the greatest fan of Ryan Uberhand, and he changed my mind a bit with the music for this game, especially level 3, which of course will be coming up after this. I will not talk too much during that level so you can appreciate the music. But at the foundation level of any game, gameplay should be first and foremost, and I didn't feel that Last Ninja 3 in any way, shape or form shifted or raised the bar for improved gameplay compared to the first two games. Actually, I feel that it's tedious. It can be quite sluggish at times, and of course, in order to make things more spicy, they added some new features, or one specific new feature. I can't go over the interface for those who may not be aware of this game, the game series even. Bottom left, the power. The left one is your health, the right one is your enemy's health. To the right of that, score, and underneath that a dragon, which I'll get to. Further to the right, above the ninja head, is whatever you're using or holding currently, and on top of that is a scroll wheel which will show any items you potentially can pick up. It is very generic in its location point out thing. It may show that something is available for pickup and you have to run around like an idiot to actually find the one spot. But let's go back down the middle to that dragon, which you can see is partially green and partially red. That is your Bushido power, Bushido meter if you want, and intending no disrespect towards Bushido, which is a code of honor, much like medieval knights' chivalry codes. There's nothing outright wrong with the code of honor, but in my case I find the Bushido meter more to be a bullshitter meter, because it's a gimmick thing which, if you fight enemies with the same weapon type or an inferior weapon type to what they're using, you will gain Bushido power. If you beat someone who's using fist for the sword, then you will lose Bushido power because it's not honorable. And if you run from fights, you are losing Bushido power as well because that is not honorable. The problem is with the amount of fighting that you potentially would have to go through in this game. The procedural meter, you are better off just ignoring it until when you actually need to make use of it, which is only on the final level that it is critical. If you were to take a physical fight with the appropriate weapon or an inferior weapon, you would be stuck with this game for absolute weeks, just trying to perfect the fighting involved. Coming up to the Guardian of level 2. Hey! Surprise, surprise, the Guardians are using Nunchaku, or Nunchucks, whatever you call them, quite clearly emphasizing the fact that Nunchaku is by far the most powerful weapon in this game. But I'll be quiet for a minute or two so you can listen to level 3's music, which I found super enjoyable. Returning to the combat, just like in the other last Ninja games, you have access to different weapon types. First and foremost, of course, you can find unarmed, not recommended in most cases, but then you have access to a sword, a staff, nunchaku, and shurikens, throwing stars, whatever. I'm fairly sure they call them something different in the manual, but whatever. We know them as shurikens or throwing stars. Each game have had one weapon which is distinctively more powerful than the others. In Last Ninja 1, it was the staff that you got on level 2, which was clearly by far the strongest weapon in that game. In Last Ninja 2, it was the sword, and I think they tried to counteract that one weapon usage by introducing the Bushido-meter, sorry. But in this game, the nunchaku or nunchucks are definitely the most powerful weapon, which of course also means that when the enemies are using it against you, you are getting just as much clobbered as they are, and all the guardians of each level will use the nunchucks. Here's another example. I could have cut out the lives remaining screens, but I just want to showcase I am not playing this game with infinite lives or cheats. I should probably go over the different stages in detail, but what you see is just as easy to work out, I suppose. The second last level, level 4, the longest, most obnoxious level by far. You basically have to smith a key And in order to do that, you'll have to go and get the components necessary, which is a bit tedious. This is one level I did not enjoy. These precision jumps are a staple in the Last Ninja series, and I think most people would agree that the swamps in Last Ninja 1 are by far the worst of the entire jump sequences in any of the games. But it all depends on the precision of the controls, and I should probably go over the technical details and come up with some sort of conclusion for this game, because we got a bit to go, but not that far, and I love explaining things. From a graphical point of view, they have pushed the envelope within the Last Ninja engine style, whatever, I guess. But personally, I do not find it impressive. It's more detailed, and there's probably more on the screen than there was in Last Ninja and Last Ninja 2, but to me it doesn't really give anything I haven't seen before. The different enemies are looking slightly different than they were in the original games. Oh, original games, I'm saying. 2 other games. But I don't necessarily think it adds anything, it's just different. Yeah, I mean, it's a green car instead of a red car, it's still the car. Yeah. I know it's more than a color change, but one thing I've noticed, and I don't know, it's very subtle, but it's definitely noticeable, is it applies to the enemies as well, but it's mostly for the main character, Amakuni. His upper body and his legs seem to be about a quarter of a second out of sync. They seem to be moving individually. And if you can't see it yourself, that's okay, but I could definitely feel it. The controls of the character can feel extremely sluggish and unresponsive at times. When you have to do somersaults, which is of course your only way of jumping. In Last Ninja 1, you could hold down fire, and then you had 3 different types of somersaults, 3 different lengths. But you could hold down the fire button and then move the joystick in the appropriate direction, and the character would immediately do a somersault in that direction, or the appropriate length for what direction you are pushing the joystick. In Last Ninja 3, you need momentum in order to do the somersault, and you only have 1. Now, the sensitivity for when you are hitting a dangerous substance and not hitting a dangerous substance in this game is extremely obnoxious, and it doesn't always seem to be willing to actually respond to you trying to jump. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. But it wasn't a massive issue, but it was definitely noticeable. The enemies that you're fighting in the first 2 games, you would have enemies that you knock down and then they stayed down. Then you would have more commonly enemies that you would knock down once and then they would come back up, and then you would knock them down again and then they would stay dead. I'm pretty sure there was 1 enemy in the first game that you could infinitely knock down, but in Last Ninja 3 they will come back all the time. They will regenerate health quite slowly, but they will regenerate health and they will come back up. I guess it's a safety measure that's been put in place in order for you to be able to build up your Bushido power if you need it. But because you only have limited lives, and because they can do a significant amount of damage to you, you tend to want to avoid fighting and especially when you're learning the game and you're trying to figure out where the different objects are and how to interact with different things, having to outrun enemies constantly becomes an extreme chore. It did for me. I did not find that enjoyable, and knowing that I could put them down for about a minute and then they would get back up while I was scurrying around looking for clues, looking for interactable objects and all that, I did not like that at all. The enemy AI is supposed to be super advanced compared to the earlier games, but especially if you look at level 1, I think that's been showcased not to be the case. They run around like absolute numbskulls. Of course, in combat they do have distinct advantages, because that's only fair. There's one of you and there's several of them, so of course they need all the advantages they can get. And they have the ability to walk through your character's sprite, whereas you can't walk through them, which means of course that they can walk through you and get behind you, meaning that you constantly have to reposition in order to fight them, and they can engage you at angles where you can't hurt them. Is that challenging, or is it just a cheap way of making the game artificial and more difficult? One thing I should mention is that once they draw their weapons, because of course they don't run around with their weapons drawn, they become much more focused at hunting you. But as long as they haven't got their weapons drawn, you can run right behind them and they will happily ignore you. I suppose it's probably some sort of simulation of the guard not being being alert to your presence, whatever. It just feels off. There's no sound effects in this game, and that is common for the series, so that's perfectly okay. The music, it's not bad by no means, that would be a blatant lie, but except for those 3, I didn't necessarily find any of the music tracks even to be noticeable. Good quality, definitely, and good sound and good tone, beat, and all that, but nothing out of the ordinary. Reaching the final level, hooray! Thankfully not very long. To finish off my conclusion of this game, I honestly think it was overhyped. I am very puzzled by the fact that C64 managed to give this game 93%, but they weren't the only ones. There was a lot of other magazines at the time that gave this game a very high score. You can question why that is the case. I mean, maybe it's just me not getting it. There's a good chance that could be the case, and if that's the case, then my commentary is void, I suppose, but at the same time, I know how I like my games, and I know how I like gameplay to flow and things like that, and for me, Last Ninja 3 has never been anything special. If I want to play a Last Ninja game for immersion, I would definitely play Last Ninja 1, and for enjoyment of music and gameplay, despite the fact that Last Ninja 1 of course has some epic music as well, I would definitely be playing Last Ninja 2. Last Ninja 3, I completed it for the sake of this video, and I can safely say that I am very unlikely ever to play this game again. I don't particularly want to. Anyone loving this game, or liking this game, or enjoying this game, good on you. It's not for me to try and take your enjoyment away from you. I'm not sitting here saying that this is a bad game. I'm saying that I just don't get the big fuss that's supposed to be about this game. So, if you enjoyed, I'm very happy for you. Getting up to the encounter with Amakuni, Also, what to say, Kunitoki. This is where you need your Bushido power. If that green dragon is not completely green, you cannot deflect the shurikens he throws at you, and that is the only way you can damage him currently. So that is why you need to worry about Bushido power on the final level. The scrolls, I could have mentioned them. You need to get the scrolls in order to enter the Guardians' hideouts, whatever. In the case of the final level, as soon as you ready it, Kunitoki will start throwing his shurikens. So you need to get in a position where you can deflect the shurikens before you actually use it or equip the scroll. But of course, just deflecting swing stars at him is not epic enough, so you need a man-to-man fight. How appropriate, I got reduced down to my final life. You are a hero! Maybe not. I can't help but think that System 3 could have taken this franchise a lot further than they did. They didn't have to have the rivalry between Amakuni and Kunitoki. It could have been Amakuni doing something differently. It could have been a different character. I suppose the last ninja. Amakuni is supposed to be the last ninja, so without him, he wouldn't really be the last ninja. But one of my most favorite games of all time, possibly my most favorite game of all time, Ninja Gaiden Black for the original Xbox. That could have been a Last Ninja game. Last Ninja could have been taken to that point, and personally I would love to see Last Ninja 1 and 2 done as a game type like Ninja Gaiden. It was a long chat, a long talk, whatever you call it. I think it's overhyped. It's okay, but not more than that. And on that note, thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye for now.